Hello guys, welcome back to our anime explainer. Guys, please like the video and subscribe to my channel. Today is explanation of upcoming episode of Soul Land 2 Peerless Tang Men based on novel. So let's start. After hearing her comment, Shushansha immediately began to behave. That comment was far more effective than even consuming medicine would have been. With a righteous look on his face, he didn't bother Bei Bei anymore. Hu Yuhao patted Wang Dong's back as he spoke. It's all right. I'm all right now. After all, one who survives a great disaster is destined to have good fortune forever after. Wang Yang also walked over to Hu Yuhao's side. All's well if you're all right. You better rest up too, then we can get back on track and return to the Northwestern Army barracks. After we rest up a bit and get ourselves reorganized, we'll immediately head straight for Star Luo City. Hikaitu couldn't help but ask, Teacher Wang, you're not really going to deploy us this time around, are you? This question was one that the 7 students from the outer courtyard were most concerned about. Wang Dong let go of Hu Yuhao, and they both looked at Wang Yang together. Wang Yang smiled bitterly and said, I'm afraid there is no other choice. The Continental Advanced Soul Master Academy Grand Tournament will go on for a month, which is a very long time. Ma Xiaodao, Dai Yueheng and Ling Luochen will need at least half a month to recover completely. All we can do now is entrust you guys to represent the academy in battle. Teacher Wang, are we up for it? Hu Yuhao asked. Representing Shrek Academy in battle wasn't something to be taken lightly. It meant that they were representing the academy's honor. Shrek Academy was known as the #1 academy in the continent because it nurtured numerous outstanding people of talent and skill. How did it display this strength? The Continental Advanced Soul Master Academy Grand Tournament was the best stage to do so. Shrek Academy had already monopolized the position of champion for who knows how many years continuously. As for the other academies, they could only vie for the position of runner-up. Before the Sun Moon Imperial Soul Engineering Academy from the Sun Moon Empire had appeared, there hadn't been an opponent that could compete with Shrek Academy. Bei Bei stood up and, just as before, spoke with a smile on his face. Teacher Wang is right. At the end of the day, we are just reserves. Moreover, the Continental Advanced Soul Master Academy Grand Tournament doesn't have a knockout system. Elder Xian originally mentioned that we were meant to take the stage regardless, to polish our abilities, and to serve as a shield for the main team members. We can still proceed according to that plan. Regardless of the outcome, everything will work out if we try our best. Besides, we can still trick our opponents. I reckon reinforcements will arrive before we have take on more than a few matches. Our academy isn't that far from Star Luo City. The most it'll take the academy to select people and deploy them is around 3 to 5 days. So, in reality, we only need to hold up for a few days. That's right, we're not weaker than the others. I've heard that the contestants from the participating academies normally have the strength of 3 or 4 ringed soul masters. We're Shrek Academy's elite students. What do we have to fear? The main force might not even need to make a move, because we would have already advanced courageously and stormed straight to the finals. Shushansha exclaimed, filled with fighting spirit. Jiang Nannan rolled her eyes at him, such developed limbs, and yet such a simple mind. Xiao Xiao was sitting right beside Jiang Nannan, and couldn't help but stifle a chuckle upon seeing the deflated look on Shushanshi's face. However, Hu Yuhao still held suspicion in his heart, because he could clearly remembered what Elder Xian had said before he left. The academy's reputation can only rest on your shoulders now. This clearly wasn't something that he had said without thinking. Moreover, Hu Yuhao also believed that his mentally dexterous senior brother could not have failed to notice those words. But then, why was he talking like this now? Could it be to bolster everyone's hearts? With these thoughts running through his mind, Hu Yuhao naturally couldn't expose his senior brother. All he could do was do his best to go along with Bei Bei. It wasn't easy to raise everyone's morale, so how could he say something against him? Only Wang Yang and the 3 remaining inner courtyard students knew that there weren't many students in the inner courtyard. There were extremely few students under 20 who were sufficiently capable. On top of that, most of the inner courtyard disciples conducted missions outside as Shrek Guardians. Thus, it was practically impossible for the academy to gather another group of Shrek's 7 devils from the inner courtyard. Sadly, there wasn't much hope for those in the outer courtyard either. Bei Bei, Shushansha and Jiang Nannan were outstanding individuals from the outer courtyard, but even if they could gather a few more students with 4 soul rings, would they really be stronger than Hu Yuhao, Xiao Xiao and Wang Dong. As a result of that, they could only count on themselves during this Continental Advanced Soul Master Academy Grand Tournament. The next day in Shrek Academy, Elder Xian was sitting on a flight of stairs with a bed of messy hair as he poured alcohol into his mouth. The sound of footsteps rang out from behind him, and an old man clad in white walked over to him. "What's the situation?" The old man clad in white stood respectfully behind Elder Xian and said, "The situation has already stabilized. It's corpse poison. Thankfully, this is only a simple kind of poison and you brought them back just in time. Their lives are out of harm's way now." The Soul Tool department has already taken a look at Chen Zifeng's leg and deduced that it's not going to be a problem to make a prosthetic for him. Even though his movements will be affected a little, it shouldn't affect his strength too much. Elder Xian spat out a breath full of the smell of alcohol and sighed, "That's good." At this moment, someone walked in from outside the courtyard. That person was the Dean of Shrek Academy's Martial Soul Department, Yang Xiaozhe. "Elder Xian, the Sea Gods Pavilion conference that you proposed to hold has been prepared. Let's go." Elder Xian stood up and walked out. His silhouette clearly seemed a little lonely. Yang Xiaozhe followed behind Elder Xian, sighing in his heart. It had been many years since the Sea Gods Pavilion conference had been held so frequently. "Elder Xian, this matter isn't your fault. You shouldn't blame yourself too much," Yang Xiaozhe advised in a low voice. Elder Xian didn't speak, and only responded by shaking his head. Sea Gods Pavilion. Things weren't so different from the last Sea Gods Pavilion conference held here, but the atmosphere surrounding the whole place was somewhat heavier than before. Elder Mu, who was seated at the head of the table, was still lying on his recliner, the shadows obscuring his body. The ones seated beside him were Elder Lin and Elder Xian. The 4 deans and vice-deans from the Martial Soul Department and the Soul Tool Department were still respectfully seated at both ends of the table. Elder Mu's gentle voice rang out. "Speak, dear Xian. Why have you proposed this Sea Gods Pavilion conference?" Yang Xiaozhe was so shocked that his face turned pale. "Elder Xian, how can this be? No one can guarantee that something won't go wrong. Besides, this responsibility cannot completely rest on your shoulders." Carelessness on the part of Xiaodao and the others also played a huge part in this matter, along with the unusual abilities of that evil soul master. He could actually unleash an all-out attack comparable to that of a soul sage. This can only illustrate the direct correlation between the destructive power of his skill and the number of corpses he rose. "Elder Xian, you are one of the main pillars of the academy. The academy cannot lose you." Elder Xian shook his head bitterly. "Were it not for the fact that we were lucky this time, Yu Hao would have died there. Were it not for the fact that his spiritual shock coincided with the backlash of that evil soul master when he was captured, the hope of the academy would have been ruined in my hands. With a mistake like this on my hands, how would I have the face to continue staying in the Sea Gods Pavilion? You don't have to try and persuade me. I've already made my decision. Yao Haoshuan's family has a relatively decent amount of influence, so I'm going to go take a trip to his clan and do my best to help dispel their sorrows. Everyone, I'm going to say goodbye here." With that, he turned around and walked towards the door. "Come back." A calm, yet imposing voice that contained a formless pressure rang out. These 2 words were spoken in a very calm manner, but they made Elder Xian, who'd started walking, forcefully stop moving. "Elder Mu, I truly do not have the face to remain anymore." Elder Xian had his back towards the others, his body trembling slightly. Only he knew just how much pain he was enduring in his heart. "I'm allowing you to come back. Do you not hear me?" Elder Mu's voice became serious. Elder Xian's body trembled. Just how many years had it been since he'd last heard Elder Mu get emotional while speaking? 80? Or was it 100 years? Although he was extremely unwilling, he still turned back and sat back in his seat. Even the other people had subconsciously straightened their backs after sensing the anger in Elder Mu's voice. They were all silent out of fear, not daring to utter a single word. Among everyone seated within the hall, the most senior of the elders were Elder Xian and Elder Lin. However, even they were slightly junior to Elder Mu. Elder Mu was the last disciple of Elder Xian's master, and also his youngest disciple. In other words, Elder Mu was actually Elder Xian's junior uncle master. In terms of age, Elder Mu was only 10 years older than Elder Xian. However, the contributions he'd made towards the academy and his strength placed him as the true number 1 figure in Shrek Academy. Elder Mu, who'd been reclining on his seat, slowly rose to his feet. His appearance could finally be seen clearly. Elder Mu had a very ordinary appearance, and he wasn't very tall either. He even gave off the feeling that he already had one foot in the grave. If Hui Yuhao and Wang Dong were here, they would definitely be stunned. This elder, who was able to make the determined Elder Xian turn back with a just slightly angry tone of voice, and silence the upper echelons of Shrek Academy, was actually the old man, who they always saw lying down outside their dormitories. Right, he was the Elder Mu who'd shaken the entire continent before. He was now over 250 years old, and he was titled as the Dragon God Doluo, Mu En. 200 years ago, his name had been famous throughout the continent. Now, perhaps everyone might have forgotten about him. Many people assumed that Shrek Academy's strongest expert was the Daotai Doluo, Xian Zi, but in reality, the Dragon God, Elder Mu, was undoubtedly the number one figure in the academy. The other elders who were participating in the Sea Gods Pavilion's conference revealed strange smiles as they listened to Elder Mu. Elder Lin, who sat opposite the two, directly laughed. Humiliated, Elder Xian said, "Lin Huachuan, what are you laughing at?" Elder Lin didn't fear him in the least. She smiled slightly, naturally. "I'm wondering whether you'll even have the chance to pass down your bloodline anymore." Ha 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 ha, the other elders immediately laughed in unison. The four elders couldn't help but laugh, and Xian Lina even covered her face with her hand. Elder Xian's aged face immediately turned bright red, and his humiliation turned to anger as he slapped the table and yelled, "No laughing, no laughing." His outburst sounded serious, but the other elders seated around him laughed even louder than before. Even Elder Mu revealed the trace of a smile on his face. "Okay." Elder Mu gently tapped the table with his hand, silencing the other elders. However, the strange looks in their eyes didn't change in the least. Ever since the Guardians were established, every single student who joined was already prepared to make a sacrifice. Elder Mu said indifferently, "This situation was special. Not only were we facing an evil soul master, we were even facing one who had the very rare ability to control corpses. The large number of massacres he caused with the bandits were for the sake of obtaining more corpses, so he could cultivate in the techniques belonging to his evil sect. The fact that you were able to eradicate him is already a good deed. I also feel very pained by Yao Haoshuan's sacrifice, but the dead are already dead. Our Shrek Guardians, however, have to continue on. Your godly Daotai Bull makes you gluttonous, and you weren't wrong in trusting Xiao Dao and the rest. This tragedy can be even more of a reminder for us to be careful in the future. You followed them this time, but what would have happened if you hadn't? Perhaps they would have suffered even greater losses. Also, will an elder always tag along in every mission the Guardians undertake? It'd be better for you to train even more and better Guardians rather than blame yourself." Lina. Present. Xian Lina hurriedly stood up and replied respectfully. Seeing as Elder Mu was getting angry, Yang Shaozhe didn't dare to refute him even if he was inwardly dissatisfied. Thus, he assented respectfully. On the other hand, Xian Lina had a victorious smile on her face. The Vice Dean, Cai Maya, hurriedly tried to mediate the situation with Yang Shaozhe. "Elder Mu, then what shall we do about the Continental Advanced Academy Soul Dueling Tournament? The inner courtyard only has 10 or so disciples now, and only 2 of them can qualify for it. However, they are somewhat weaker. Shall we take the previously eliminated student from the Soul Tool department and send him along with those 2 students?" Elder Xian turned awkwardly and nodded. "If I fly them over, we should be able to make it in time." Elder Mu shook his head. "No. We don't need to aid them any further. Let's let them show off their skills." "Ah?" The various elders present were all astonished. Of which, one elder blurted out, "Elder Mu, this matter relates to the honor of the academy." Elder Mu laughed calmly, "Right. Honor. Haven't you felt that we've been tied up by this honor for the past few years? Losing isn't scary, the truly scary thing is complacency. A few people have already assumed that the Martial Soul Department is unparalleled under the heavens, and it's time for a wake-up call. During the past 30 years, we've been seeing new developments in the field of soul tools practically every day. However, what about the development of our soul tool department? If we compare ourselves to the Sun Moon Empire, we're not lacking by just a tiny bit. As society progresses, we have to continually improve our way of thinking. Even if we send extra help, would they definitely be better than those kids?" Yang Shaozhe naturally understood that his teacher was referring to him. He couldn't help but lower his head, and his aged face turned slightly red. If anybody else were to speak of the importance of soul tools, he could disapprove. However, the person speaking was the teacher, who he respected most. He couldn't just not pay attention to his words. Although our official team can't participate this time, you shouldn't forget that our preparatory team this time is our academy's strongest ever. Since the heavens have decided to give them some early practice, why don't we help them succeed? Elder Mu said, talk things over carefully. Within 5 years, I want the martial soul and soul tool departments to undergo a partial fusion. Add a weekly course on soul engineering for the students of the martial soul department. Even if they don't learn how to manufacture soul tools, they must know how to use them. Xiaozhe, Maya, Lina and Duo, you must remember this. The advent of soul tools cannot be stopped. We're unable to predict to what degree they will develop in the future. Therefore, we must gain an advantage while there is still time. Our Shrek Academy has never had a lack of talents, and in the future, soul masters will fight while combining both their martial souls and their soul tools. Perplexed, Yang Xiaozhe asked, Teacher, aren't we rushing things? Even if soul tools are developing quickly, soul engineers aren't comparable to soul masters that have surpassed the soul sage rank. Aren't you neglecting the real problem and concentrating only on details? Elder Mu said coldly, anyway, you're mistaken. Not too long ago, I personally went to the Sun Moon Empire, and the things I saw there were able to shock even me. The growth of soul tools in the Sun Moon Empire has already exceeded your imagination. I even saw a huge soul tool that needed many people to control it, and that soul tool was capable of threatening even my life. Something like that has the power to change the course of an entire war. Everything I said today wasn't without cause. If you keep on with this mentality and refuse to change, Shrek Academy won't last for long. What? Yang Xiaozhe was dumbfounded. He was aware of how strong his teacher was. Even if he was a powerful titled Doluo that had reached rank 95, in front of his elder Mu, he was only a tiny existence. And now, his teacher said that there was a soul tool capable of threatening his life. Just how powerful was this soul tool? And if we look at things from the Sun Moon Empire's perspective, they should be unwilling to remain in the shadows anymore. If a war breaks out, you think our academy can shut itself up in an ivory tower? With things as they are now, we might even be the real objective of the Sun Moon Empire's attack. After hearing these words, the expressions of the nearby elders turned solemn. It's been a long time since I have proposed something. Elder Mu said in a grave tone, now, let's vote for what I've proposed today. After that, he raised his hand first. Given his position as master of the Sea Gods Pavilion, no one had ever gone against Elder Mu's propositions in the past, let alone now that his words had moved the elders. Everyone voted in favor. Elder Mu nodded and said, the academy needs to support the development of soul tools. Huachuan, your department will receive a little more funding. Elder Lin nodded. Elder Mu said, that Fan Yu from the soul tool department isn't bad. What about making him the vice dean? Once again, everyone voted in favor. He'll be in charge of researching and developing soul tools. Elder Mu said to Xian Lina, he doesn't need to teach anyone else except his 2 inheriting disciples. Moreover, he'll be the one leading the students in the exchange with the Sun Moon Imperial Soul Engineering Academy, yes. Tang Yue was sitting in the dormitory and gazing out the window. Her pretty face was a bit pale. I wonder how Bei Bei and the others are doing. Elder sister Le Xian said that the disciples of the inner courtyard were seriously injured during this mission. One of them died in battle, and the other 6 were wounded. Even if Bei Bei and the others are all right, I'm afraid they'll have to participate in the competition. Even little Yu Hao, Wang Dong, and Xiao Xiao are there. On the other hand, I'm quite useless. Even if I'm the head of the Tang sect, I don't seem to have a bright future. It's already been a year since I broke through the 3rd ring bottleneck, and up till now, my soul power has only reached rank 33, it's getting harder and harder to advance. As of now, even that Dai Huabin from the 2nd year has surpassed me. I'm already in my 5th year, and I'm starting to wonder how I'll be able to graduate once I'm in the 6th grade. Breaking through the 4th ring seems so difficult. After wiping her tears, Tang Yue stood up and clenched her delicate fists. I want to become stronger. I'll do everything to make the Tang sect great again. Father, Mother, forgive me. I'm afraid that your little Yue will have to go Star Luo City. In regards to the Star Luo Empire, Star Luo City was worthy of being called the number 1 city. It was the Star Luo Empire's political, cultural, and economic center. It also had the title of the undefeated imperial capital. Star Luo City's city walls reached a height of 100 meters, and unexpectedly, their width was also 100 meters. These walls were made of a very durable stone. The area it encircled surpassed 1,000 square kilometers. It surpassed 50 kilometers in both length and breadth. The core of the city, the so-called inner city, was obviously situated in the center of Star Luo City. The inner city had a length of 960 meters and a width of 750 meters, and the inner city walls around it were 20 meters high. It was a city within a city. The imperial palace was already complete thanks to the White Tiger Duke's lineage and the imperial family. Every time it was rebuilt, it got bigger in scale and more magnificent. Star Luo City's population exceeded 8 million inhabitants, and could hold up to 20 million people if one were to add the foreigners. However, even such a big city had started to become crowded as of late. The number of visitors had rapidly increased in a short half-month, and all the hotels were full. Therefore, the officers had to take over the residences of a few commoners and open their houses up to the visitors. The number of troops inside the city had also increased quite a lot due to security reasons. There was only one reason for such a huge change: the Continental Advanced Academy Seoul Dueling Tournament that was held every 5 years. And now, the tournament was taking place in Star Luo City. There were 4 great empires on the continent, and the various capitals of the empires would take turns to host the tournament. Therefore, Star Luo City would need to wait another 20 years to hold it again. How could such a grand occasion not attract all the residents of the Star Luo Empire? Wang Yang sat in the place of honor. On his left were Ma Xiaodao, Dai Yueheng, and Ling Luo Chen. All 3 of them had pale complexions. Their internal organs were still damaged. Even if they had received medical treatment and tried to recuperate their strength with their own methods, they had rushed here in great haste with the aid of a flying-type soul tool. This had taken quite a toll on them, and had actually aggravated the state of their injuries. The time they would need to recuperate was going to be higher than the previous estimates. Given the situation, it would be strange if Wang Yang had a good complexion. The registrations would end today. Wang Yong had already discussed things with the organizers of the tournament and signed up the current students, but the reinforcements from the academy were yet to be seen. The competition would start tomorrow, and at this point, they could only rely on themselves. Wang Yang tried to calm down, and showed a slight smile on his face as he said, "Did you have a proper rest yesterday? The Star Luo Empire's hospitality isn't half bad." Bei Bei, who was the first on his right, said, "We had a good rest. However, today is the last day for the registration and those reinforcements from the academy." Wang Yang waved his hand and said, "Don't worry. I've already received a letter from the academy. It takes some time to gather students that were away. Moreover, our academy has a certain privilege, thus, we must fight for Shrek's glory. I really wonder how far the preparatory team can go." After putting the students from the outer courtyard at ease, Wang Yang explained calmly, "The Continental Advanced Academy Seoul Dueling Tournament is the ultimate competition for the various academies around the world. It has fair and equitable rules that test the total strength of each academy's students. Because of that, the manners in which we compete are extremely plentiful and lively. I'm going to explain some of them today. There are a total of 133 advanced Soul Master and Soul Engineering academies who've come today, and all of them are staying in this hotel. The first round of the preliminaries is a direct elimination match. In other words, the losing party will be directly eliminated. The first round will be a 7v7 team fight. The lot drawing for which will be carried out tomorrow. I reckon that it'll take 3 days for the first round to be finished. Once the first round is finished, we'll be split into groups. Each group will have 8 or 9 teams, and will undergo a round-robin tournament. The rules for each of the round-robin matches will be randomly chosen from one of 3 situations. Firstly, single elimination. Secondly, a 3-man, 2-man, and 2-man coordination match. And lastly, a 7v7 team fight. This will test the comprehensive strength of every team. Every match will have a lot drawing preceding the match, and this will determine which situation will be used for that match. This is the best way to test your strength as a whole. I'll explain the specifics of these matches after you get through the first round. Right now, you'll have to face your opponents in the first round. After you finish that, we'll be able to get into the elimination round and wait for our backup. Xiaodao and the rest won't be able to make it in time, so we can only rely on you guys to win this no matter what. After the elimination round, you won't have to be so nervous about the later matches. Furthermore, we could have our backups coming at any time. Even if they aren't able to make it in time, Xiao Dao and the rest will be able to recover their strength within half a month, at the very most. And after all, we're still the number one team. The moment they heard that the first round was an elimination round, everyone's faces clearly turned serious. If Shrek Academy were to take their leave in the first round of the Continental Advanced Soul Dueling Tournament, they would become a joke. Yet, Wang Yang was extremely confident. Without revealing any worry at all, he smiled slightly. What are you guys doing? Are you nervous? You don't need to be nervous at all. After the tournament starts, you'll realize that your opponents are far, far weaker than what you were expecting. You've forgotten one thing: you're the elites who've been chosen from Shrek Academy. Even if you're the preparatory team, the fact that you've been chosen to represent Shrek Academy on this platform has proved that you've got enough strength. Moreover, this strength is something that the other academies will never be able to compare against. You can't assume that your opponents from the Continental Advanced Soul Dueling Tournament will be as strong as the powerful enemies you've faced during your advancement tests. Everyone present was slightly stunned, right? Teacher Wang was right. They were the disciples of the number one academy on the continent. They couldn't use their fellow peers to judge the strength of their opponents. Dai Yueheng sighed, Teacher Wang, is there a need for you to console them like this? Although nothing you said was wrong, the students who are representing their respective academies are the most elite existences among their peers as well. Although there might be a few weaker ones, the overwhelmingly large majority of our opponents are at the Soul Ancestor rank on average. Furthermore, the academy we're fighting against in the elimination round tomorrow will definitely go all out. Ma Xiaodao said, what Teacher Wang did was right. Were it not for him, they wouldn't have any morale at all. They wouldn't have even needed to fight if that was the case. All we can do now is trust them completely. Can you or I even move now? I asked you three to stay behind to tell me how long you'll need to recover from your injuries and fight, Wang Yang said solemnly. I need an accurate time span. Ma Xiaodao said, if I go all out cultivating to recuperate, I'll need 15 days. Dai Yueheng said, my cultivation isn't as good as Xiaotao's, so I might need a bit more time. I reckon 17 days or so. Wang Yang's heart became increasingly heavy. This was his first time taking a team to a tournament, and he wasn't confident in himself at all. Ling Luocheng said, my injuries are relatively lighter, so 10 days or so should be good. There was finally a rather good piece of news. After doing a few calculations, Wang Yang continued, in other words, you'll be able to fight in the third or fourth match of the knockout tournament if everything goes well. After sinking into contemplation for a while, Wang Yang nodded. We can only hope that they'll win their first match. We'll only have the chance to continue on if we're able to get into the knockout stage. You have to keep the fact that we don't have a backup team a secret. Their confidence has to be established via victory, and I believe that they'll have the strength to maintain the glory of our Shrek Academy. Hui Yuhao and Wang Dong both returned to the former's room. After shutting the door, Wang Dong couldn't help but ask, Yuhao, do you think what Teacher Wang said was the truth? Elder Ma, don't be anxious. I don't think things are so simple. Sitting in front of Ma Rulong was the captain of the preparatory team. He was less than 15 and looked very pretty and delicate. He had big bright blue eyes and a tall and slender build. His hands, which were now placed on the table, were also as white as jade and very delicate. Even a girl was unlikely to have such beautiful hands. He seemed to like his hands very much. Even while talking to Elder Ma, he was still gazing at them as if looking at the most beautiful piece of art in the world. Elder Ma furrowed his brows slightly and asked, what's not so simple? The delicate youth was still looking at his hands as he said, Shrek Academy isn't made of fools. How can they not know that those three aren't enough to stop us? I have great confidence in Big Brother Rulong, but as I see it, Shrek Academy must have run into some kind of problem. Didn't they always attach great importance to us? It's strange that they would get careless at this time. After hearing these words, Elder Ma's face became slightly red. He had also suspected that something like this might have happened, but he had still said those words to rally the students. That would be better. Xiao Hongchen, you should use all this energy to deal with those students of Shrek Academy that are under 15 years old. They'll be your opponents in the next tournament. The youth named Xiao Hongchen finally raised his head and smiled. This smile was just like that of a beautiful woman. Then, he said, Elder Ma, only I can be my opponent. Ma Rulong, who was sitting on the other side, gave him a supercilious look as he said, Xiao Hongchen, if you have something to say, just say it. Xiao Hongchen put on a happy face. Big brother Ma, I've already said it. You should try your best, because if you fail to defeat the current members sent by Shrek Academy, you'll be kicked out of the illustrious Virtue Hall, just like Elder Ma said. That would be a pity, wouldn't it? A hint of anger immediately appeared in Ma Rulong's eyes. Elder Ma glared at him and said in a grave tone, sit down. I'll now choose those that will participate in the first round. Even if he was only the captain of the preparatory team, both the leader of the main team Ma Rulong and the old man that was leading them seemed to dread him. Behind Xiao Hongchen's smile was hidden an arrogance that seemed to place him above every other living thing. Early morning. Just as the first rays of sunlight started to shine over Star Luo City, the capital of the Star Luo Empire was shrouded in a solemn atmosphere. The inner city was located on the northern side of Star Luo City, facing south, and a luxurious resting area was built on the eastern side of the platform. It had been specially built for the members of the various academies that would be participating in the tournament. However, there was only space for around 70 academies in this resting area. This meant that there wasn't space for the academies that would be eliminated in the first round. With that, there would be no waste of space, and the students would be more motivated. After the tournament had changed its system to the current one, except for the final stage, the thorniest one was exactly this first round of eliminations. Both its awesomeness and harshness exceeded that of the round robin that would come later. There was still place for tactics in the robin round stage, and you could even make use of tactical defeats. However, the first round would lead to a direct elimination. Losing the match would mean that you were out of the tournament, and every team had to go through this first round. Even the defending champions of Shrek Academy were no exception. When drawing lots, there was a possibility of a team obtaining a bye. However, none of the academies could enjoy its privileges directly. The teachers leading the respective academies had arrived at the inner city very early in the morning. They received a number plate based on the time they had registered, and afterward, they started to draw lots. At this time, the lots had already been drawn. An official of the Star Luo Empire had the duty of announcing the results of the lots. Once the order of the matches was decided, the final preparations for the early phase of the tournament could be considered complete. The sun slowly rose from the faraway east. And Star Luo City, which was located in the middle of the continent, was engulfed in warmth. On the city walls of the inner city was a middle-aged man, with his hands crossed behind his back and an imperial golden crown on his head. He was wearing a long bright yellow gown, and was standing exactly on top of the main entrance to the inner city. This also happened to be the best place from where to watch the match. At his side was a beautiful woman wearing fine attire that belonged to a palace lady. She was standing respectfully and quietly beside him. A few steps behind her were the Star Luo Empire's civil and military officers, Your Majesty. An old man wearing the red clothes of a civil officer took a step forward and bowed respectfully after arriving at the man's side. On his long gown was embroidered a python. This signified that his status was very high. He was worthy of holding the highest position. Prime Minister, how are the arrangements going? The Emperor asked with a smile. The Prime Minister respectfully said, everything is ready. The lots were drawn, and the order of the matches has been decided. There are no problems in the periphery either. We can allow the citizens to enter the arena. The Emperor of the Star Luo Empire nodded and said with a smile, good, pass my order down. Clear the important passages, and allow the people to enter the arena. Make them enter in a slow and orderly fashion. If there are problems, the ones in charge of the area involved will be punished severely. Yes. The Prime Minister retreated several steps before turning and leaving. At this time, the crowd started to enter Star Luo Plaza under the lead of the army. The long lines converged inside the plaza. You couldn't watch the tournament for free. However, the admission cost wasn't too high either. It was only 2 gold soul coins. And even if a limited number of people could enter the plaza, there was enough space to accommodate more than 20,000 spectators. 2 gold soul coins was the base price. The nearer you were to the platform, the higher the price. You had to pay 100 gold soul coins to enter the area that was nearest to the platform. For the commoners, it was a lot of money. But for aristocrats and merchants, it wasn't that much. The Star Luo Empire was treating all the spectators fairly. The more you paid, the nearer you would be to the platform. But aside from this, everyone was treated the same. There weren't any seats, and you could watch only while standing. This was so that they could accommodate more people. Today, the people from Shrek Academy were dressed in their traditional, dark green school uniforms. These were the standard colors of the academy. Furthermore, they stood at the very front of all of the other academies. However, there were no objections to this. This was the glory that Shrek Academy had accumulated through their strength for over 1,000 years. However, the other participants who stood behind them involuntarily revealed a look of astonishment as they looked at their lineup. It would have been fine if only 10 people had turned up, but an overwhelmingly large majority of the 10 didn't seem like they were anywhere near 20 years old. They were able to see how young they were without even using a bone test. Only the 3 who stood at the very front seemed like they were of an appropriate age. However, they all wore cloaks that concealed their facial features. A large majority of the academies were inwardly praying that they wouldn't meet Shrek Academy, or the Sun Moon Imperial Soul Engineering Academy, in their first match. Otherwise, it was practically announcing that they would be eliminated. The participants from the Sun Moon Imperial Soul Engineering Academy stood behind Shrek Academy, allowing them to get an even better view of the students from the latter. The youngest students from Shrek Academy were Hui Yuhao, Wang Dong, and Xiao Xiao. Hui Yuhao was slightly better than the other two. After fusing with the Ice Empress torso bone, his stature had changed greatly. He could now pass for a 14 or 15-year-old youth. However, Wang Dong and Xiao Xiao's faces still looked somewhat infantile. This was especially true for Xiao Xiao. She was rather short, and looked like she was only a young girl. At this moment, even the proud Xiao Hongchen was filled with doubt. Just what was Shrek Academy trying to do by sending out a lineup like this? It took a full hour for the spectators to enter the arena. There were simply too many people. The originally empty Star Luo Plaza was now packed with people. Fortunately, the place didn't seem too chaotic due to the iron fences partitioning it, in addition to the army maintaining order. It was now 9 am, silence. A loud voice suddenly spread throughout the entire field. After hearing this voice, every soldier in the army stood perfectly straight and raised the lances in their hands. Immediately, as the solemn voice covered the entire field, the originally clamorous Star Luo Plaza promptly went silent. His Majesty, the Emperor, arrives. This video will end here. Thank you for watching.